Now, a bit of background about this afternoon's discussion. We're going to talk about mental health awareness. Videos on social media with school children fighting, bullying in our nation's schools, and on the cold truth set, and perhaps maybe the parliament. Inadequate support systems for children with mental health challenges. While we are all concerned about the state of crime in our country, I can't help but think, are we breeding future criminals? Are we preventing some of our most vulnerable people from succeeding in society by not addressing these topics? Talking about mental health is still very taboo in Trinidad and Tobago. He mad? She mad? Who run away from St. Anne's? We throw these statements around, but many people are really afraid to discuss the presence of mental health disorders in their own families. It is easier to pretend it does not exist. Sadly, by not speaking about the topic, we would be fueling the stigma associated with mental diseases and disorders. The concept behind the cold truth from our opening billboard: our country is falling apart and we want to get to the root of some of our country's most pressing problems. Today, we have with us clinical psychologist Kelly McFarlane and the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, Dr. Margaret Nakit Chatur. Now, Dr. Chatur is a clinical and educational psychologist. She is the director of the MNC Psychological Testing and Counseling Center and a senior lecturer at the University of Trinidad and Tobago. Her professional affiliations are with the Trinidad and Tobago Psychologists, the British Psychological Society, the Dyslexia Association of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Society for Police and Criminal Psychology. Ooh, that's a lot. She conducts psychometric assessments and access arrangements for exams for students with learning disabilities. Her research interest areas include adolescent parenting bereavement and indigenous qualitative methodologies for Caribbean peoples. Before we begin our discussion, I would like to welcome both of you lovely ladies to the Cold Truth. Thank you so much for being part of this afternoon's discussion. Now, before we go further, I would like to share a video with you at home from the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists. And whilst we are waiting for them to, get the videos sorted out, I'd like to talk about the Association of Psychologists and the Strategic Action Plan.
All right, so thanks again, Kim, for having us on the program. The Association of Psychologists has been in existence for more than 40 years. By an act of Parliament, we came into recognition, as it were, in 1996. Now, our association has more than 75 financial members. We have about 250. Hopefully, those listening could come on board again. But we have a lot of financial members, and our psychologists are divided into many different specialties. So we have on board clinical, counseling, educational psychologists, and our members also are categorized. So we have students who are members who are doing their psychology degrees. We have full members, affiliates, and so on.
Now, have you seen an increase in interest? Have you seen an increased interest in persons addressing their mental health over the last few years? Either.
I've seen an increase in persons addressing issues with their children, for sure. I think that people are learning more and more that it is better to not be in denial and get things sorted out earlier, or get things checked and assessed earlier than later. And that's a lot better for the child.
Now, what is the system like? What resources are available to the general public?
Now, remember, Kim, psychology in Trinidad is something relatively new. Trinidad is an island, and people sort of figure that once you go to somebody to talk about your business, everybody knows. So that was one of the obstacles preventing people from coming in, from accessing psychological service. Now I think it's a bit different, because mental health is recognized as a serious issue, both in all of the public sectors, in education, in health, and so. So I think more and more, especially for children and adolescents, we see parents accessing services for this target group.
Okay.
And this is wonderful news, and you know, it kind of touches on our strategic plan for 2018, the association's strategic plan. Could I talk about a bit about that right now? Oh, right. We plan to host a series of events. We are focused on child and adolescent psychological development. So we are hosting a series of events throughout the year to educate the public about the specific needs of children and adolescents, the specific developmental needs and the specific challenges that children and adolescents face. And also we will be doing some fundraising for a possible trauma center because we would really like to provide free counseling services for children who have experienced some sort of trauma in their life.
Right. Have you seen or have you encountered an increase in cases of children referred for psychological assessments?
Children who are referred, that's what you're saying?
Yes.
Yes, again, schools are coming on board, I think, very successfully, and they, well, we have to look at the type of services that they are accessing. Many of them access services for psychoeducational assessments, especially for children with learning disabilities. Many of them want accommodations for their children, let's say at the SCA exam or at the CXC exam. So we have parents coming in, and then there are parents again who really not sure what's happening with their children. Are they on the autism spectrum? You know, are they ADHD, ADD? So more and more as social media is informing parents that there are difficulties with children, they are accessing services. And this is a good sign because they're not leaving things just as some fathers have said, you know, boys will grow out of it. They're not leaving things to chance anymore. They're doing interventions, and I think that's a good sign.
Now, I would like to take a look at a couple videos.
Yes.
Are the videos available, guys? Okay. And whilst we wait for the videos again, let's talk about bullying. What would you say accounts for bullying in our nation's schools?
Well, what accounts for bullying?
Yeah.
I'd say, perhaps, well, first of all, there are predisposing factors to bullying, right? You have a child who is a bully, you have to look at the family, the society, the community, that they are growing up in, the school that they're going, and who their peers are, and then there are individual factors.
Right.
Some of those individual factors is the temperament of the child, what their early life experiences were, and what their relationship styles are. How do they form relationships? Can they form relationships? Can they form bonds? What about the empathy factor? By the time a child is a teenager or an adolescent, bullying doesn't just arise out of nowhere. You're not 15 or 13 and you're suddenly a bully.
Because I want to find out exactly what is the root cause
where
of
it
bullying.
comes.
Yes.
There are road signs.
Yeah.
There are road signs you can see from the time a child is born, actually, you know, in their temperament from birth, 0 to 3 years. You see something in their temperament. They might be difficult to soothe, difficult to feed, and so on. And they may be difficult to deal with toddlers, and then when they start into preschool, they you either have the child that is very aggressive, and the other children don't really want to play with them, and then you have the child who is very sort of docile, and that's usually the victim of future bullies. So we try to look at the way that we deal with these children in terms of, do we use punitive measures to deal with them, or do we teach them how to deal with difficult situations?
Wow.
So I wanted to add that bullying is not a new phenomenon, as you know. This is an issue that has been discussed, I think, ad infinitum. And you're asking what are the root causes, and I think it has always been there. What we're seeing now is that with the advent of social media,
Right.
because people are videotaping, because people are talking about it, because people are comparing themselves to, let's say, what happens on social media, it's coming into the forefront. Now, we have heard all kinds of comments from ministry officials, especially one who said that, I fought when I was a boy, so it's not a big thing. What I'm saying is that every incident of violence has to be taken seriously. And I think we cannot deal with bullying from an old-fashioned view. This is a new phenomenon. We have things like cyberbullying with the increase of social media, and we have to look at ways of dealing with it now in the present. As I said, this is not a new phenomenon, but I think the discussion and the conversation has to begin again as to what can be done. I just want to mention here that as far back as 2009 and 2011 and 12, the Ministry of Education did a lot of anti-bullying prevention campaigns in schools, Kimm, and teachers accessed interventions and so, and the question is, what has happened from then to now? Why is there so much emphasis now on bullying in schools as if the child is a social deviant? And I think social media really continues those stereotypes.
Right.
So what is happening, therefore, is that we begin to look at the child or the young person as out of control, aggressive, and that is a stereotype, I think, that is being given to young people. And when you look at the root causes, there always has to be something. And we always say that if a child is not comfortable at home, if a child cannot express themselves in the home, they will do it at school.
Right.
If a child is being bullied at home, they can't bully an adult, they can't hit back their parents, but they will react in the school with children who are defenseless. So again, we're looking at home and school situations that may trigger behaviors where children feel powerless in their own intimate situations. And remember, the bully is the victim is a bully, and the person who bullies is also a victim.
Right.
Because all of them lack social skills, all of them lack the ability to relate and to have proper social interaction with each other.
And when we, just to pick up on that point, when we continue to focus on the fact that this child is a bad child, let's punish him or her
Right.
with punitive measures, we miss the real issue. We miss helping that child develop the social skills and the relational skills that he or she needs to actually have a brighter future.
Now, I was about to say that, I'm a little bit wary about labeling a child a bully, because that label can stick with a child for the duration of their school attendance. When bullying occurs, or when a bullying incident occurs, you find that parents are usually outraged, and rightly so, demanding more protection and intervention from the schools to prevent the child who bullies from being in proximity with
Their own
their child.
Yeah.
But what alternatives can be implemented?
Now, you see, that's the thing. As I said, bullying has been discussed. We need to put bullying on the national agenda, in that if there are no national policies in place, so that, let's say, accountability here, when the child bullies, or when you see all of these videos or children, once you're in a school uniform, you're representing your school. So even if you're not in the school and you're outside and that video is done, it is attached to a particular school. Where's the accountability in the schools? Where's the accountability in the homes for the children who are bullies? And yes, we don't want to label children, but I think we have to look at the core issue here, which is there are no consequences, there is no accountability, and children, now remember, one thing that I've always stressed on, you've got to look at the developmental stage of the child, and you have to consider that children want attention. Children want to know that they can get that fame from others by being aggressive. Children want to know that others fear them. That's the stage that they go through. And if we don't take into account those developmental factors, we will then throw I think parents give in too often. They give up. Our child is aggressive, our child is this. They become fearful of their children. There's no accountability. And many of these children are manipulated. They can manipulate parents. So they do the same thing in the school. Right. Once they see that fear of another child, they say, aha, that's the victim there. Now I could zoom in and I could take from them what I can. So a lot of factors there, Kim, as you're seeing.
Because I mean, my child is very manipulative, but I wouldn't want to,
How old is your child?
She's 8 years old, but I mean, from inception, she has been very, strong-headed, strong-willed, and I must get what I want kind of type thing. And
but does she take advantage?
Oh, she's not a bully, but
right.
I
you can see that
clever enough to know.
She's creative.
I'm clever enough to know and understand that adults are supposed to be smarter than children.
Yeah.
But can a child with bullying behavior patterns be counseled and retained so they can be in the school system?
Absolutely. They should be counseled and retained so that they could be in the school system. Why should we ostracize them? This is a human life. And this is not somebody who has somebody who has a sociopathology whereby they cannot have the empathy parts of their brain turned back on. This is a child who has had a start that did not prepare them for their present.
Right.
So definitely, and again, I would emphasize that bullying is a relationship issue. Teaching that child the appropriate social skills, showing that child care, that at least one person believes in them or would be interested in building a relationship with them. Because remember where I started with the bullying and the child goes to school and they're aggressive. A bully is someone who has faced a lot of rejection growing up, and by the time they reach, let's say, the age 8 to 12, you start hearing I don't care behavior. Call your mother, I don't care, right? And then so that the motivation and the caring system in their brain again has gone offline because they're accustomed and they expect people to reject them, beat them, put them in a corner, don't listen to them. So that's why by the time they're an adolescent and they join a gang and so on, the empathy circuits in their brain, now that part is gone, and they get excited being able to hurt somebody else, feeling that power. But yes, they are rehabilitated.
To that though, because you raise an important point there, Kim, that we must consider. Should the child be ostracized? And just like deviant behavior can be categorized into mild, moderate, and severe, I think bullying can too. So if you have lesser forms of bullying like teasing or nitpicking and things like that, empathy, show empathy counts. But when you have severe forms of bullying that involves knife attacks, that involves severe attack, deviant behavior, I think those children need, the intervention is needed where they are pulled apart, pulled aside, and dealt with. Because let me tell you something. Bullying is imitated. Other children who see children in the system getting away with certain behaviors and maybe being the hero of the day, they want to be the same thing, especially if they, and you see very nerdy children, very quiet children becoming bullies, and you tell yourself, what's going on here? Because the behavior, just as the bullies imitated this behavior possibly from their own parents or their home social environment, these children, other children would imitate. So I would say that you have to look at what the bullying behavior was all about, and you really have to consider what is the type of intervention that I'd like to do here.
Do you think our government schools or the state schools are equipped to deal with bullying?
I do not think so at all, because you see, teachers always complain. Teachers do not deal with emotional and behavioral disorders. They're not equipped to do that. I want to mention a significant point here. One of the, I don't know if you're familiar with the Anti-Bullying Association of Trinidad and Tobago, one of the main factors that they have said for bullying is parental bereavement, loss of a significant figure, loss. So that when that loss occurs and when grief happens, children are expected to just fall back in, go back to school, hide their grief. I remember one child who came to me said that, Miss told me to finish my SBAs. I have enough time to cry for my mother when I finish my SBAs. And it is the fact that teachers cannot relate to loss and to grief. They can't understand it. And a recent study that was done that I did showed that teachers, instead of empathizing, because Kelly mentioned empathy, they tend to be very punitive. Because children, younger children in primary schools who begin to bully, they tend to be very reactive to loss. They get into fights, they pick on each other. And they suspended from the school, not recognizing that reaction is a reaction to the grief or to the loss of something, a grandmother and all of that.
Right. So, I mean, you mentioned an incident regarding a child. A few years ago, I ended up in a situation where one of my brother's friends brought, his little 5-year-old nephew to my home to play. What had happened was his father was murdered a couple days ago. So I am just sitting there now meeting this child for the first time, and we are talking, and I'm very good with children. I like to think that I'm very good with children. And then he says to me, Auntie, they killed my father. I can't wait till I get bigger to kill back the people who killed my father.
Correct.
And I was stunned, I was shocked, my jaw hit the ground, because hearing that kind of anger and emotion coming from a baby, a 5-year-old is still a baby as far as I can see it, it pushed me to the point where I started an organization. I have never publicized it because I manage it on my own. And it's called the One Oak Foundation, where I deal specifically with children who have lost their parent of violent crime.
Wow.
And what I found is, with working with this little child for about 3 to 6 months, just expressing love and, being an emotional support to him, his perception, and explaining, what will happen if you have 5 other children like you. What you think going to happen? We're going to end up in a situation in this country where everybody wants to kill everybody, because everybody is a victim. And from the research that I had done, at least for the last 10 years, we would have had murder totals of about 4 to 500 murders at an average of 1.5 child per murder victim. And then you see at least 1,500 to 2,000 children
being
who are
affected by that.
victims.
Yes.
And that was annually. And then you do that by 10 years, and you see the number.
Generation that is coming up.
You see 20,000 plus children who have been affected by this, but you have no systems in place to deal with it.
Only because people think that children are incapable of grief, Kim. My research showed that. A little boy who was started to be display bullying behaviors, touchy girls in their private parts in the school. The principal called me, and he witnessed a murder-suicide. He saw the father decapitate the mother, and then turn to him with a cutlass. But of course, they found him the next day when he ran off. So overnight, this 6-year-old boy lost his mother, lost his father, and 3 years down the line, I am seeing him. Wow. And what the neighbors are telling him is, you're just like your father.
Right.
So, and he is ostracized. So you have a 9-year-old with a lot of rage, not being able to express it, not being able to let it out. As you said, for every father or mother who is killed, there is a child left behind. And you are quite on point, Kim, when you talked about that little boy, 5-year-old boy who said, I'm waiting till I get big.
To kill them.
Yes, when I worked with schools in lower Port of Spain, in East Port of Spain, and so I remember the 7-year-old boy who was referred to me because he was found to be at risk. And one of the things he said is, I'm waiting till I'm 12 years old. And I said, what's happening? He said, that is when they will give me a gun, and I'm going to shoot the people. And he said, the police who stormed our house one day and killed my uncle and brother in front of me. Now this is a 7-year-old talking about when he's going to be 12 and get a gun and shoot the people who shoot his brother and uncle. So could you imagine? That's just one incident. And for every parent, and all of the incidences are not like that, not so volatile, not so highly aggressive. But children are not allowed the opportunity to express their grief and how they feel, especially if the grief or if the death was through murder, through, through violence. If it was a violent death. when children are exposed to deaths where they can prepare, it's different.
Right.
So they know the parent is dying, but not when it's sudden, not when it's violent.
So that again speaks to the importance of early intervention and noticing, being aware of what a child is going through from even young ages. So just like your experience with that little boy, and you seeing the changes, even though he's just 5, 6, 7 by now years old, you can see the change already. What would have happened if he did not have a social support system, or at least one adult who could empathize with him, talk to him, help him develop? And a lot of this is brain-based, but we wouldn't get into that. But really help him develop what needs to be developed emotionally and physically.
And our telephone lines, I have to open our telephone lines. Let's get interactive. 622-9785, 628-6093. We welcome all of you, our dedicated viewers, to get involved in this afternoon's discussion. But as we continue, can a child with bullying behavior patterns should there be separate accommodation for children identified as having challenges, especially if they have violent tendencies?
When you talk about accommodation, to what you're referring?
Schools.
Like different schools.
Yes.
So again, as I said, the child who has, let's say, severe behavioral patterns, that intervention is needed. And it has to be a triangular approach, because when you take the child out of the school, he goes back into the home, which may have triggered those behaviors. So there has to be intervention for parents, there has to be intervention for the child, and it's a matter, I think, of addressing those needs, and then they can fit back in. But I do not believe that children with severe emotional and behavioral disorders should be left in a school where it's not attended to, but they should be put. And we have places like that here, in Trinidad. People don't know that there are places where children are taken out of the system. But again, these places are not properly managed by psychologists, by intervention strategists who could really address the issue. It's like a babysitting place. Some of those homes that I know, they're there, they're attended to, but not in the way that would be proactive.
And we've got to stop to take a short pause, but when we return, we will continue with this evening's discussion. You are watching The Cold Truth. We'll be right back. Program, you are watching The Cold Truth with Kimm Cole. Am I on? Am I not on? Guys, welcome back to our program. You are watching The Cold Truth with Kimm Cole, and in studio this afternoon we discussed mental health awareness with Dr. Margaret Naked Chatur, who is the president of the Trinidad and Tobago Association of Psychologists, as well as clinical psychologist Kelly McFarlane. Now our telephone lines are open, 622-9785, 628-6093. We invite you to be a part of this afternoon's discussion. Now, with social media so popular among young people, online bullying has become a new issue. How can this impact young people experiencing online bullying from their peers? And before you answer that, let's stop to take this call. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live. Tans, good afternoon. Hello.
Good evening to our very special Miss Cole and to our two guests, Dr. Chatur and Miss McFarlane. A special good evening. Every time I think Miss Cole has hit the button, she comes even better. I've been concerned as an elderly person looking at our children, looking at those hideous playbacks on the TV, what you call it, online. Especially the pinnacle was Friday when I thought our children were in Spain, and in Spain you have the people chasing the bulls as a holiday. That's what I thought was going on Friday in our little country of Trinidad and Tobago. And it's so good. As I said, Miss Cole seems to get better every day. Dr. Chatur, we are seeing an epidemic in our country. And I'm not being political, but every time I see my Minister of Health, He tells me everything is rosy, but it's not rosy. And the times we live in now, don't you think a subject like psychology should be introduced into the schools? Because it's not going to get any better. We have all those murders. It's a small place. These children return to school. And, you know, you might get, when their parents are being buried or what have you, oh, we will provide guidance for them. But for how long? How long? And is it just the children or the wider sector that is involved? These are the questions that you know, I ask. And as I said, I'm so glad every time I turn on and Ms. Cole brings on a subject that is pertinent for all of us. I am now saying, listening to you, we have cookery, we have sewing. We need another subject. Like yesterday, psychology, mental psychology, well-trained in our school. You know, in the bigger country, you have a nurse in every school. So if a child falls, something happens, the nurse is there to tend to you. You go to the nurse's office and so. Why can't we have something like that here where you see that it is needed, it is important, it is for our children's well-being, it's for the next generation? Why can't we see that? I mean, it's out of hand now. And you know what? It is my people that is suffering the most. And I myself see a whole generation in my time going down the drain. And I don't want that. So I am hoping that the who is looking at this program and hearing my little elderly contribution and think, listening to you, Dr. Chatur, listening to you, Ms. McFarlane, and of course my own Ms. Cole, and thinking, you know, that is a good idea. We can save our children.
Hello?
To come. That is my contribution today. I'm locked on and listening. And out.
Thank you so much for a very, you know, important and valid point. Should we have child psychologists at the nation's schools?
Well, we do have school psychologists, and remember we have a child guidance unit where if there are behavioral problems, children go to the child guidance, and there are clinical psychologists attached to the child guidance unit and also student support services. I think the caller mentioned that they should have psychology in schools. So I am a lecturer at the university, and part of our training includes psychology courses so that teachers, this new generation of teachers, are being trained in psychological skills to show empathy and all of that. I think what does not happen, Kimm, in the schools is that children through their HFLE programs are given enough mediation, or if you want to say sessions, in looking at social interactions, social skills, the development of things that we learned when we were growing up, but apparently parents do not focus on, again, etiquette, proper etiquette, how to interact, especially how to solve problems, how to deal with problems. Children don't know how to problem solve, so they react, they become very aggressive. You know, they don't want to know to step back, to be proactive instead of reactive. So again, it goes right back into what are we doing in our homes, and why is everything left to the teacher in the schools? Parents, again, are not, they should be held accountable for their children if bullying occurs. I firmly hold to that belief.
Thank you so much for, you know, lovely answer. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live. Hello? Hi, good afternoon. Caller, you live? You're welcome to call back 622-9785 or 628-6093. On the topic of cyberbullying, what advice would you give to parents with respect to dealing with their children's use of social media?
One, take away the phones. No, but seriously, now remember, cyberbullying is more pervasive and it's passive only because there's no face-to-face contact. It's all online. It could be your best friend who is bullying you and you don't know because there's anonymity. because of cell phone, because of the increase in social media, we know it is pervasive. So what I think parents have abandoned their roles to some extent. They no longer monitor their children as regards cell phones, as regards computer, so that children do anything they want as regards that. So more monitoring. Kelly, what do you think?
Well, I know that the cybercrime unit advises that cybercrimes such as online bullying should be reported, because you know the effects of bullying, and especially social media bullying, because these things take on a life of their own once they get online, are could be very severe. And just like with, let's say, face-to-face bullying, cyberbullying could lead to depression, low self-esteem, low self-worth, and so on. So definitely take steps to make sure that things are nipped in the bud, and they don't go on and on and on.
Right, so let's take a pin to take this call. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to your guest as well. Kim, what I wanted to find out is that when you have a situation like what we saw with the children fighting, isn't it, don't you have like this, well, I'm putting this to your guest, the teachers, parents come together and have discussions about, you know, how they do with bullying, and the schools have a bullying policy in place to address some of the issues that we're seeing now. And another thing, Kim, how we have leaders in this country who sometimes come across in a certain way, right? So what do we expect from some of the children looking on at these things as well? I know that it has a lot to do with the home, but our role models as well are not actually doing a very good job at setting an example to the young people. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much for your contribution.
Thank you.
Yes,
Do you
so
think our role models-
the caller asked if there was a bullying policy in schools. I'm sure that many schools address bullying, it's on their agenda. As I said, there is no national policy, however, and I think that it is time that we put that on the agenda. There should be a policy in place so that when it occurs, even at moderate levels, that accountability is given to both the aggressor and support for the victim. The second question, she said, is that she finds that there's a lot of imitation by improper, I think she alluded to that, improper role models in our society. And as I said, bullying is a behavior that is imitated. All right? It's a social behavior and it is imitated. And as I said, it goes the gamut because the person who bullies feel that they can get away with
Right.
it. If there were consequences, stringent consequences from the get-go, that this behavior is not tolerated, then I think we can see something happen. But you know, Kim, what I have found, and I have looked at this, our society has a social tolerance for violence. We have come to the point where it's tolerated, and people see children bullying and seeing all of these aggressive behaviors, and they say, so what? They'll grow out of it. Yeah, they'll grow out of it. But it should be, students, children should be held accountable from the moment a behavior happens. And we tolerate it. So,
Right.
you know, we think it would go away.
And
yes.
I want to talk about consequences, but I'm going to discuss consequences after this call. Hi, good afternoon, caller.
Yeah.
You are live. Hi, good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello?
Yes, good afternoon, dear. You're live.
Yes, ma'am. As you're talking about bullying, it don't happen in the schools alone, you know. It is rampant in our society, neighbors to neighbors. Neighbors come in a neighbor's place and want to beat them to take over the place. And the magistrate's court, if you bring up a private matter, no justice come out. It is not dealt with in the magistrate's court. So we have no justice in Trinidad and Tobago, and people have no choice but to turn to violence. The man who's the survivor is the survivor of the battle. And that is how it is because we have no justice, especially in the magistrate court, and the police is telling go and meet the JP and bring up matters. Until that is fixed, this will happen because the politicians are on the plate tit for tat. Because I so are not supporting your bill, and because you in opposition are not supported, and because you...
Thank you for a very high energy contribution, caller. Now we're talking about consequences. One of my main contributors to this program suggested that parents pay a fine. When your child misbehaves, you, the parent, are fined. Do you think that that is a possible solution?
I really think accountability should be at all levels. Parents need to know that when their child gets involved in certain types of behavior, they should be held accountable. Three things I would recommend here. Yes, I do agree that they should pay for whatever happened. They pay the fine. I feel that parents should also be part of a parenting skills program. That should be, let's say, compulsory. And thirdly, I think they should do community service. I feel that we do not send the message clearly enough that this is a behavior that will not be tolerated. And I'm all for accountability from primary school right up. Children have to learn.
So parents should pay a fine. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You're live.
Hello, good afternoon, Ms. Cole.
Yes, good afternoon, my dear.
Very privileged to get a living experience. I've been waiting as well. I've been a teacher for approximately 40 years. And hearing Mr. Tu there referring to psychology, I was trained and whatnot, and she mentioned something about HFLE. Now, fine is a very good program, well organized, but if it is introduced properly in the schools, I'm from a school in St. Patrick, and I've been retired, but I took interest in calling. Now, the principal, he was expelled or suspended recently as well. He kept on taking the junior teachers who were never trained in training college to put them to teach HFLE not as a voluntary basis, but compulsory. And I found that it was not making sense. I raised concern many times, and he never took it on seriously. Now, secondly, what I have noticed in the past, not because I'm out of it, but I shared a great interest in it and in teaching, and I was very successful to the minute I retired. They also promoted deans and some of the head of departments recently, a couple of years ago, that who was nearing retirement. And you know when we grow old, we does not perform as we would have done in the past. And that has been a practice in the school that I left, and over the period that I have done teaching, I have seen that the older heads are given all the opportunities because they are nearing retirement, so they will get a higher monetary gain when they retire. And I felt that it was, I always raised concern. Look, I'm retired about a year now, and I haven't seen that any corrective measures. Currently, they have a vice principal who was almost suspended as well because he had a court matter, and he's acting as dean and vice principal in St. Patrick. So I, as being a psychologist, I have trained. I may not have the temperament to deal with it currently at this stage, but I find the need to look, the Minister of Education should look into that. Look at his. He is a retired personnel. Not that he has the resource, but there are younger people who will perform a better task than him. Thank you for the time given me.
Thank you so much for your contribution, caller. I mean, in a nutshell, the caller is saying that room should be made for younger professionals as opposed to, the older ones. But we're going to touch further on that after this call. The calls are coming fast and furious. Yes. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live.
Hello?
Yes, good afternoon, caller.
Good afternoon.
Yes, my dear, you're live.
Yeah, my suggestion is like even the people who are living in the community center with the house burned down, I believe something you have to keep, because the TV, we don't know these parents and just follow the TV because they might be out. I feel it's time for me to start keeping some meeting in Woodford Square. In a nice way where people could come on and chit-chat while somebody, and so, you have to think about Woodford Square,
Right.
I don't know why. I feel like I feel like the government like is selling people soul.
Thank you
Like
so
in some
much.
kind of demancy.
Yes, my
That's,
dear.
that's my the deep devil thing. Yeah. Deep devil.
Thank you so much for your contribution, caller. But wow, and the calls are coming in, my dear.
Well, I like
Everybody-
his reference to the University of Woodford Square.
Yes.
You know, where possibly conversations could start again for people who are on the ground who won't have the opportunities to access certain services. Because that's really what Dr. Eric Williams had the university for.
Right.
For these public lectures on issues of social concern. So I
Absolutely.
really like that suggestion from the caller. Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, good afternoon, my dear. You're live.
Yeah, I'm calling to make my contribution about... Yeah, hello?
Yes, sir.
Right. I'm calling to make my contribution about the school violence, right?
Uh-huh.
To deal with the school violence, right? Yeah, you see like the schools, the children, them were getting on violence. When you hold them and lock them up and put them in an institution to do chores, right? Like let them go and do some gardening, you know, give back to the community, about hard work. Let them go out there and do hard work. And so also the parents that's responsible for the child have to do that too. You understand? Because if my child, them come from school right now cleaning the house by watching the program, right? And they have to come and clean the house with me, right? They can't sit down and watch TV, we have internet, we have everything here. Yeah? But some of them parents just leave the children to see for themselves. They live in children to see children. You understand? It's frustrated for the children too. Because a child come from school, he wanted to do his work, he else about the younger one.
Right.
The parents lying, smoking, drinking right in front of the children, all these things. You have to look into these things. You understand?
Yes.
Then the social workers, them not doing the job too. Right? I gone to, right now I pay maintenance for one of my child. And we gone to the court up and down with my son. And I cannot get through. Take no time to spend with him. And you're out of hand right now, eh? Yeah, you're out of hand right now. And I tell the court, well, do a thorough investigation and visit the school, visit home me, visit by them. Send the social worker. Nothing like that never done, right?
Yes.
He get real trouble in school from standard 2. He stayed on, he's 14 years and he stayed on in school here right every year. You understand? And is that way we're going through. The court procedure too slow. Everything's slow in the country, too slow, right? You see like the children, them school children, they need to deal with from primary school straight up in a hard way. You understand? You're beating them, you're abusing them, putting them in a jail, you know. They're going out there and doing community service, but hard community service. Go in school.
Thank you so much for your contribution. Would you like to shed light on that?
He makes a good point about, yes, giving children chores and so on helps them, develop structure and discipline and so on. But when we talk about bullying behaviors, we can't lose sight that there's something emotionally wrong that's going on, that's missing, and that there's something that the child needs. The child is not feeling cared for. The child is feeling like, they're not fearing consequences. So something is missing and something has gone wrong. So we're still missing intervention.
Right. And let's pause to take this call. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live. Hi, good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. What I believe is strongly that they should teach the children, because we talk about African children here, teach them the culture in school. They don't know it. Now the Hindu school, they have a temple to teach their children. The Muslim have the school, they have the temple to teach their children. Where the African go? Teach them the thing, because they eat potato chips. They don't know it was invented by an African person. The French fries that they eat. It's African in the world. You know?
Caller, I could barely hear or understand. Could you please call back 622-9785 or 628-6093?
Didn't hear that.
Yes, I mean, and I'm pretty certain that he was going to make, a very valuable contribution. Now, you have a conference that's coming up we have a flyer here. Can you tell us a bit more about that before we close?
Sure. Kelly is our PRO, so let me put you on to Kelly to
And I'm going to
promote
ask my director
event.
to put up the flyer
Yes.
on a split screen. Yes, my dear.
Yes, we're hosting a conference on the 25th of April on inclusivity for children with special needs, behavioral differences or behavioral challenges, emotional challenges, mental health problems, and learning disabilities. So we have invited some stakeholders and we are advertising it to people who work with children who have special needs to come and be a part of the discussion. It's a very important discussion.
I just want to interject here. We have many workshops on identifying these disabilities, but our workshop is emphasizing the availability of resources, what's out there, because many parents who come in, they always ask, my child has a disability, how can the government help me, what's available, and many of them do not know what are the accessibilities and accommodations for children like these. So the workshops will focus on these areas, on schools that are out there where children can go, and we're hoping that our audience would include people like social workers,
Special education teachers, psychologists, you know, people,
occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, everyone who would be involved in the care of your child if your child has a special need. Is the flyer up?
Guys, could I have the flyer up, please? And whilst we're waiting for that, we're going to stop to take this call. Hi, good afternoon, caller. You are live?
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, my dear, you're live.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, caller, you are live.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good
I'm listening to
afternoon.
the conversation.
Uh-huh.
Hello. I am listening to, good afternoon, I'm listening to the conversation. Hello.
Yes.
Yes,
we can
good
hear you.
afternoon. Could you please make your contribution?
Yeah,
Listen
but,
to me on your phone and
The
not your
government
TV.
passed a law.
Can the government pass a law?
Don't beat your children. Don't beat your children, but charity begin at home and then end abroad.
Right. I understand. Thank you for your contribution. I mean, the caller is alluding to corporal punishment.
Yes, that still happens.
Yes. Can the government pass a law? Would you advise the government to...
But corporal punishment is not permitted in schools.
In schools, we know.
Yes.
But at home.
Or at home.
well, if they do, they need to teach parents what else can be done. So a lot of psychologists now, we advocate for something called conscious discipline. And that is a method whereby we help to train children to regulate their behaviors and their emotions and to problem solve. We encourage children to problem solve through talking to them and helping them rationalize. And it's brain-based. It can be explained brain-based in terms of the prefrontal cortex and developing executive functions. So that is actually what a lot of the psychologists in our membership advocate for us instead of corporal punishment, even in the home.
In the home.
Yeah.
And there are parenting skills programs. And one thing I find the Ministry of Family Services they have done a good job. But again, the persons we want to come to these parenting skills programs hardly ever do. Just as the parents who have children who are deviant don't come and attend parent-teacher meetings where they would learn different strategies of coping. So it's, well, you ask for recommendations, Kimm, and I think one of the main things we have to look at is public awareness on harassment, on even bullying, because all of these things, as you see, I know you alluded to domestic violence, all of these things lead to that if there is no intervention, if not properly treated. Because again, you're looking at here mismanagement of self, the inability to have self-control, which would make you go from 0 to 100, pick up a knife, and I saw somebody, they wrote in the papers, how could a man go to kill the woman and end up killing 4?
Wow,
And you can imagine the rage that happened, the loss of self-control. And as I said, we do not teach our children those social skills, how to problem solve when a situation happens, what do I do, what's plan B? rather than take up a knife. What can I do? What can I walk away? Can I go and talk to someone?
Right.
And that starts in the home.
I mean,
yes.
that is a topic for another day.
Another day, a
We
huge
will
topic
invite you to return to the cold truth. I must say thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to check us tomorrow at 4:45 p.m. for more hard-hitting, in-depth discussions on the issues that affect us all in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you so much for tuning in. We see you tomorrow. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, our country is falling apart.
The nation is in mourning tonight.
Our institutions are failing. Crime is out of control. It is our duty to fix it. We are touching on every sector of society. Race, class, and corruption. Nothing is off limit. No holds barred. The Cold Truth with Kimm Cole.